Yeah. No front number. Yeah.
Welcome to another Unashamed Unafraid episode. We are bringing something back from the dead today. It is the Q&A.
Woohoo! We finally started getting questions from you guys. Thank you for reaching out.
Only because we asked again.
I know. Yeah. So y'all were always ready
that's
to
not true
answer
because
the
we've
questions.
actually had a ton more emails lately.
We've had a
ton of
lot of
people
you.
Yeah, we
reaching
have,
out.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we didn't 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So
We'll take it. Keep sending your
Yeah.
emails.
Keep reaching out. Thank
Ask
you.
questions.
Yeah.
some of these questions are from the list that was generated. Caitlin sent out an email. You guys responded. We also added a few questions from emails that have been sent. So we're gonna dive right in. Which one do you guys want to start on?
You're leading the show, Sam.
All right.
You pick one.
Well, I'll tell you.
What question, Sam, do you want to get answered for yourself? Because you're like, I kind of have this same question.
Yeah.
How about that?
Here's the one that really stuck out to me. I thought it was deep. Would God ever hold off on helping someone fully recover from addiction in order to keep them humble and dependent on Him, or to teach them a needed lesson like faith?
See,
Well, so here's, you'd have to ask God that question.
Simple answer.
like I mean, obviously, there's teaching moments. Like there's
Yeah.
there's teaching moments in everything that we do, right?
Yeah.
That we can learn from and experience. Like there's so many men out there that are praying to God, and they're like, God, just help me take this away. Help me, surrender this. Help me stop my addiction. And then within an hour, there's temptation there.
Mm-hmm.
Here's your chance, homie. Turn to Him, right? That's your turn. That's your chance to turn to Him, and then 30 minutes later, when it's back, you turn to Him again.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's more of a question of like, well, who is God and what's He like? And so to me, it's like, so if God is He's not transactional. He's not playing games. He's not trying to manipulate us. Well, then if He's relational, what does relational mean? It means He cares about having a relationship with you. It means that part matters to Him. As a parent, He's invested in you, your happiness, your growth, your joy. So to be like, yeah, God's like, yeah, I'm just not going to help you with that because, son, you're just too dang proud and you need some humbling. You know what I mean? That could very quickly turn into some kind of punishing, kind of an a-hole God, you know?
Right.
So
And
that's like,
that happens to a lot of people.
right. So I think, it's really like, here's what I do know about God. That God will make beauty from ashes. That God is good. And when I talk about beauty from ashes, like us looking at porn is the ashes. But look at the good that God will do with men who are struggling with porn and turn to Him.
Yeah.
He'll turn their lives into something beautiful. And He'll use that opportunity to teach you. I think God's super opportunistic. He's like, you stepped in that mess, but guess what? Let me just show you how awesome I am and how much I love you. Because-
Even though you keep stepping in the same pile of crap every day.
Yeah. So, again, it's a really tricky question because that's something where we can try to put mortal and manly or earthly characteristics on a being who sees the beginning to the end. And we're like, I'm only seeing my pain right here, right now. So to me, that's tread very gently and carefully with who you're making God out to be and step back into what's the true character and nature of God before you go jumping in and answering that question.
I love how you just said he's not a transactional God. And I think that question even kind of says, hey, maybe I think he is a transactional God, and that's what
Yeah.
I feel
Maybe.
right
Yeah,
now,
that's
is that
interesting.
this may be a transactional God. And so I did that for years.
Yeah.
Something would go wrong in my life, so I'm like, oh, it's because I looked at porn,
Right.
or it's because I started this affair, or it's because I did this,
Yeah.
or whatever. And so
Mm.
it was
Yeah,
always
God's
like,
punishing me.
yeah,
Yeah.
God is totally punishing me.
Right. And so the question, it begs the question of, as this person's praying, are they wanting a transactional God? God, I want you to take away this porn from me. And so if I jump through all the hoops, will you do that? That sounds like a transaction. It's the if-then statement.
Right.
And then it's a little tricky, because then we'll read in the scriptures things like, if you love me, keep my commandments. And
Yeah.
so we're like, well, wait a minute, is God transactional? Like, and so again, it's like, okay, we have to step back from this world. Essentially is transactional in the way that a lot of us deal with ourselves, each other. Like, we kind of enter into this transactional mindset. And so it's like, I've got to start with some super big picture views of who God is. And if it's like, if we look at the scripture, like, God is love, like, if that is, okay, so I have to take that as a core and start to expand myself of like, what does that even mean? And what does a being who is like love really motivated by? How do they behave? How do they act? How would they treat me? And how would they treat everyone else? And then all of a sudden you run into the quick paradoxes of, how is a God of love let people suffer? Now you have to deal with that paradox and figure that out. So to me, like, I love the question, but to me, like, that's a philosophical one that, that's hours and years of personal study and relationship building with your higher power.
My mind goes back to the Garden of Eden. And if you can establish kind of like the underlying truth that God, Jesus Christ, is a relational being who wants to have a relationship with you, knowing that we would have to experience some level of sin and trial in order to suffer and know something of his suffering and overcome and become more like him in our lives. There's also the truth that God and Satan handle that two different ways. Satan says, hide. And God says, come unto me. And so I think
Love that.
that the lie underneath that is that God wants me to experience deeper sin and more aloneness in order to develop a relationship with him. I don't think that addiction ever can occur unless someone feels alone in their life, unless they've accepted the shame scripts that Satan has given them to carry. And that's just not God's way of doing it.
Right.
God never wants an addiction to happen. That does not accomplish his purpose of saving us and changing us through his grace.
Yeah.
And so that's my thought on it, is I think that question kind of opens up, like you were saying, James, I thought you said that really well. This is a question about the nature of God. And what we know about him from Jesus's life is that he is in relentless pursuit of our hearts, and he will never stop chasing us. So he's not interested in us being alone in that battle,
Yeah.
or for it to get harder or more difficult in ways that don't involve him.
Mm.
That's my thought.
Yeah. I love what our boy Josh here said. He's like, he said, just because God can teach us from a difficult situation doesn't mean he necessarily gave it to us. Right. Love that. That's a good way of kind of talking about that beauty from ashes principle, right?
Well said.
Love that. Awesome question. Are we
Yeah.
good on that one?
Yeah.
Next question. Can you make a real talk podcast about masturbation? Well, we've talked about that in previous podcasts. We're not going to make it its own episode, but we will answer that question right now. What do you guys think? I'm excited to have a conversation, particularly with Chris, about this, because I have pondered on this
For a
for
long
the
time.
last... When did we start talking about this, Chris? It was last time I came to Warrior Heart, which was in May. So it's been.
So it's now October.
Yeah, it's almost been 6 months. Why don't you share your thoughts and then we'll have a healthy debate on it.
Totally. So I think it comes down between you and God, or you God and your spouse, and there can be a healthy way of masturbation that can occur. For me, for myself, it's not okay for me, but for others, sure, it can be a way for them to explore their sexuality and understand their sexuality. It can be a way for them to connect to that. God created us to be sexual beings. That's not all we are, but we are sexual beings, right? If you think of women, there is one part that the only thing its function is for pleasure. That's it, right? And so we're designed to be sexual beings. So if we're open about that and we're like, say we're married and we're openly talking about it and being like, hey, just want to let you know, I'm thinking about you, I'm going to masturbate, or I did, or whatever that looks like. Or you're traveling and you video call with each other and you guys are both agreeing upon it and it's okay that you guys both feel comfortable with it. Sure. I think that is totally fine. That's up to you and your spouse. It's up to you, between you and God, on what you feel is okay for you. Can it be excessive? Sure. Just like anything else. If it's too much of one thing, too much of something, then maybe you need to dial it down and get it in check.
So I have an opposing view on that, and it'll be fun to kind of go back and forth on this. What I think now, and I wasn't quite sure until I spent a lot of time talking to other people about this and praying about it and thinking about it, I don't think that just stripping the shame out of masturbation actually solves the problem itself. I think that deeper than that is, in my mind, is that people generally masturbate in order to cope. And I just don't think that that is a coping mechanism that connects you and is helpful in the long term. I think that if you start to rely on masturbation as a coping mechanism instead of relational coping mechanisms, then it's not going to have a positive impact in your life. And so I think you might say to that, Chris, well, does it have to be a coping mechanism? And that's probably where we just disagree, because I do think that masturbation, by definition, is a way that we cope with really strong feelings. It's tied into the identity and the deep sexuality of our beings, that, like you said, we were endowed by our Creator with those things. We are sexual beings. I think He intended it for relational purposes, and the emotions that are tied into the sexual piece of masturbation, I think that because those two things are so closely tied, I don't think that you can masturbate without attempting to cope. So that's my thoughts, roughly. And one thing I've noticed, and this is what's interesting to me, is you've said, hey, I think that masturbation is okay in a very specific context. That's what you said in the past. I've talked to Steve. He's got a similar opinion. What's interesting to me, though, is that the two of you have both decided for yourselves that you don't masturbate.
Right.
And so I see many, many people who say, yeah, like, let's strip the shame out of it and not make it a solo, like this experience where I'm hiding it from people and I'm disconnecting. But those same people that I've met in my experience, the small sample size that I have of this world, are also all saying, I choose not to masturbate. And that makes me think that deeper than that, it's because we know it's not healthy for us. So I may be wrong about that, but that's my current stance.
Yep. And I could argue with you that you run in circles of people who struggle with sex addiction.
That's where I was going to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're asking people
your experience, and that's the experience of people that you're around.
And so when you're running with those circles, and as those people are the ones that are like, yeah, for me, I've figured out that because I'm a little too close to that compulsive part of me, that's my favorite coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that doesn't work out. So it might be your anecdotal experience based off
my
of,
small sample
your
size.
sample
Yeah.
size. Yeah. So I actually responded to an email about this question.
Yeah.
And so here's what how I responded to an email about that question. And this was in reference to this topic of healthy masturbation that's referenced in No More Mr. Nice Guy. And so
The book No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah.
There's a chapter in
there's
there.
a chapter in there where he
specifically
kind of
talks
talks
about
about what healthy masturbation might look like, right? And so I just responded. I said, look, I've tried to process in my own life this chapter that you reference, and I've given it a try in my recovery. I've also met other people who have tried to implement this. For myself, I found that even when I tried to intentionally, thoughtfully, carefully engage in the practice, I still walked away wondering if there wasn't a part of it that wasn't still compulsive. Or if there was just a part of me that just didn't want to have that difficult conversation with my wife, for example. Or if there was a part of me that may have just been coping with some unprocessed emotions. So I'm left asking myself, can I, as a person who has struggled with sexually compulsive behavior, even engage in healthy masturbation?
That's a really good caveat. I
Right.
think we should. Yeah.
So
that should be talked about.
my answer is currently, I am not sure that I can. Me.
James.
James. I am not sure that I can. And when I talk to other people who say they have tried to implement this, again, because I run in circles who have that are already dealing with sexually compulsive behavior, they also couldn't confidently tell me that there wasn't a small bit of a compulsive component for them still. Again, but that's my sample. Or if there wasn't a part of them that didn't want to have the conversation with their wife, or that didn't want to have a difficult conversation with themselves. Oh, I really was just kind of for example, I really was just kind of negotiating with my addiction, right?
Right.
Or if there wasn't a part of them that was using it as a coping mechanism because they had some unprocessed emotions. And again, this is because I'm not dealing with a lot of people that that have had healthy sexuality their whole lives, right? So in terms of sobriety, about recovery, I just said I'm all about recovery, not sobriety. Sobriety is just a natural byproduct of recovery. So I don't know what to tell you there. We do have an episode about sobriety versus recovery, so check that out. But for my recovery process, I did try to engage in healthy masturbation, and I never landed in a place where it felt healthy enough for me. I engaged in masturbation where the only person I thought of was my wife as a way to break free from porn and break free from fantasy about porn when masturbating. In that regard, it did actually serve as a healthier purpose for a short season in my recovery. One might argue that during that time I was engaging then in healthy masturbation. I think I was learning recovery, and that happened to be a coping mechanism I used along the way. If it's something that you want to engage in, then I believe certain aspects need to be in place as to some safeguards against negotiating with your addiction. One, I think your wife should know about it and knows that you plan to engage in it, meaning beforehand.
Before it.
Yeah. This ensures that you're both talking about and working through both of your shame scripts about sex and engaging in sexual dialogue rather than avoiding the topic altogether. It also gives her the option to engage with you sexually or not. Okay. 2, it's never compulsive. It's planned well ahead of time, every time. That creates intentionality and self-care around that approach. 3, you don't need it at all. Meaning you don't need to climax. You're not just there seeking the high and release of orgasm. 4, no fantasy, because it's the fantasy part of that escape, that compulsivity, or the coping mechanism that usually is outside of our value system. So again, I haven't done a bunch of research outside of my own experience and the experience of those who run in these circles with me, So like take that for what you will.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think as someone experiencing addiction, I look at that list and I say, I don't know that I would ever want to masturbate if I had to adhere to those rules. And so I think that brings up the question. Well, the second piece of that is I liked how that response kind of like juxtaposed. I can't even say that word. It's too fancy. Juxtaposed the two different like positions, which is like, I don't know what that would be like for someone who was raised in a healthy or a home with healthy sexual scripts.
Mm-hmm.
But your lived experience and my lived experience,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming Chris's lived experience is
Yeah.
that for those of us who weren't, what we're all finding is that it tends to be too tied together.
Sure.
Tends to be way too tied together.
And the way that I kind of loosely think about that, it's like, it's kind of that person. So like my dad was an alcoholic. Like he just knew for a fact that like he couldn't be a social drinker someday. And that's kind of the way I was trying, like he couldn't healthily drink alcohol.
Right.
And there's a bunch of people on our planet that can healthily drink alcohol.
Totally.
They can have a glass of wine once a week and they're good. So if you want to liken that to this of like, yep, I could engage in masturbation once a month or once every 3 months and I'm fine. Because it's not tied to that and it never was. Whereas I think
and it's being managed.
Yeah. Whereas for us, where it was already tied to a compulsive place, and I could probably get to a place where I could masturbate once every 3 months and make it all in my own negotiating with my addiction. I could sit and make that look good all day long from the outside, and I could explain it away all day long. But in the end, I'm going to be like, am I actually just trying to cope with some underlying emotions that I don't want to face? Am I really just avoiding having a hard conversation about our sexuality? Am I avoiding my own self and the conversations I need to have with myself about how honest I'm being about my sexual shame and stuff like that? And this one's, I think, also dangerous to blanket because I think that there are people, for example, that probably... And I believe in like people that experience sexual abuse as children that would not have an understanding of what healthy touch even felt like. And it literally the only safest way to experience healthy sexual touch might be with themselves.
Because they're in control.
Right. So I am very hesitant to really blanket statement any of this. So I am with you, Chris. It is a very individualized thing. And so to say that I think for most or everybody it's a coping mechanism, I disagree with you, Sam.
Okay. Guys, send us an email. Tell us what you think. I actually would really like to know what people out there are thinking about this conversation. Love your thoughts, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
And if you do exercise and practice in healthy masturbation, what does that look like for you? Like, are you planning it out? Are you open with your spouse, or are you open like maybe you're single, and what does that look like for you? Just some detail. No, we don't need details, but
we don't need
you know
pictures.
What I'm saying.
Yeah, please don't.
Oh man.
See, this is why we love these anonymous questions. They're so fun.
Yeah.
They're awesome. They take us to some deeper levels that are just awesome.
Okay, our next question.
What's the first question?
The
on
very
the
first
list?
question on the list. The very first question on our list is, how can I live my sexuality when there are some days I just want to have sex? I think he or she meant, how can I love my sexuality?
Yeah, I think.
How can I love my sexuality when there are some days
Or
I
live
just
in my
want to have
sexuality.
sex? My body just asks for it. But I don't want to masturbate since my church does not have a public statement about it, and every person has a different opinion about it.
Sure.
Do you
Well,
guys-
again, like I think the church doesn't have a public statement about it because, our church, LDS, is like, they're like, take it to God, to Chris's point. I think they are purposely quiet on it. Because managing people's sexuality is like super tricky and sacred ground, and it's very individual for people. And again, if we're looking to be connected, truly connected to ourselves, to God, to our partner, like to me, it's like, no, that's the deeper work you need to do with your own self, of being connected to your mind, body, spirit, God, right? And some choosing around that. And how can you engage in your sexuality really with integrity?
Because there's days I just want to have sex.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm a sexual being, and
Right.
I want to have sex with my wife. Totally.
Yeah.
And
sometimes that doesn't line
I
up with the
manage
day
that.
that she wants to.
Yeah.
And so then now it's a matter of like, hey, this is on my radar. Can you get there in the next 48 hours? Because, it's on my radar.
Yep.
But it's like just having that dialogue. And then to your point, can I ride the wave of desire for a minute, and like knowing that I'm not going to die? But I'm just going to ride the wave of that. It'll subside, and we can engage in that at a later time. Now, if you're single, do you want to ride the wave of that? Let's say we go back to healthy masturbation. If this hasn't been a compulsive behavior for you in the past, you want to ride the wave of that and then make an intentional choice around it down the road between you and God and whatever that feels like it's within your integrity. Again, that's a choice that, and I get it's not simple. That's going to take some pondering. That's going to take some prayer. That's going to take some introspection of like, am I just really using it to cope with some stress that I'm feeling in my life? And rather than deal with the stress, I'd rather just relieve it in the moment through masturbation. Oh, I'm really dealing with some anger. So rather than just dealing with my anger, I'm just going to relieve that through masturbation.
Or loneliness.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is a very personal question to me. Like, masturbation and sexuality it's very personal. And I love that we're getting these questions because they aren't easily answered. And to me, it's like, well, here's what we know some red flags are, at least, so we know from our lived experience, hey, when you're using it to cope with your emotions because you're having hard emotions and you'd rather just avoid having and dealing with your hard emotions, let's have you do that instead, because masturbation actually isn't going to fix the problem.
Right.
Let's actually just address the real underlying issue. That's what's really going to fix it, is really meet the real need.
To answer this question, I feel like I'll just go to my lived experience. I think in order to step into this well and honor your own sexuality, you have to be aware of what your values are surrounding your sexuality. So, like, here's an example. I take a lot of personal pride in the fact that I adhere to very strict sexual standards. I don't believe in having sex before marriage, and that's a choice I've made. It's very personal and in between me and God, and it's aligned with my church as well, which has kind of been the pivotal value system in my life that I've navigated around. And I feel an incredible amount of satisfaction in that realm, in being able to live in my sexuality. Like I really have felt, especially the last year as I've been getting my sexual behavior more and more under control, like I felt good. I felt really, really proud of myself that I'm living within my value system. And so I think it, like kind of a pivotal part of this is understanding and getting deeper into kind of the clarity of, what do I actually believe about this? What do I, deep down, what do I know and understand about myself and the way that sexuality operates in my life? And am I living intentionally and honestly in the way that I show up in that? Because I think the congruence in that area is what helps you love your sexuality and live your sexuality, whether or not you're in a relationship. So that was a lot of big words, but kind of the best way I could describe it.
Love it, man. Yeah.
So, okay, we are going to go to the next question. We're going to go to Josh's question, which I actually have a lot of thoughts on. Josh sent this one from a friend, which I am having a hard time finding.
Josh was asking for a friend.
I got it right here.
Josh is asking for a friend.
So, I have a friend. I have a friend.
I've got a friend.
There's the southern part of me.
He's
taking
asking
out.
for a friend.
This is welcome, Chris from the South.
Well, I've been asked for most of my life, are you from the South? And I'm like, nope. That's funny. That's awesome. So I have a friend who has a 15-year-old son with a pornography addiction, but he has some mental disorders that add to the difficulty she is having trying to help him. He has autism, ODD, and was born with fetal alcohol syndrome. She has scheduled therapy for him, but he just doesn't show. She asked me if the church has any addiction recovery programs for the youth, but they don't. The church recommends that youth works with parents and bishop and a mentor. With the limited resources the church has on this issue and the individual complexities of her situation, what resources would you recommend for her? How would you suggest she move forward with helping her son? And how can you best help her child who needs help but is so resistant to any efforts being made to do so?
There's a lot there.
So let's see that first question. So resources, Sam. I know you said you have some resources. Or what resources would you recommend for her?
Yeah, so I've worked, while I was getting experience in my undergrad, I worked with people who experience high-functioning autism for like 3 or 4 years, and I know a lot about it. Some of the things that have been really interesting to me to learn is that this is because of the neurowiring of someone who has autism. They will experience the world much different than most people, and their processing funnel, I guess we'd call that, is shaped a little bit differently. Like they can get as much input as you or I can any given day. It can go into their brain, but there's kind of this little funnel where it catches because they can't process the same amount of input as they can output. That funnel is shaped differently, and so it creates what's called a processing deficit. And as soon as that funnel gets full with sensory stimulus or other things that are agitating, that would be maybe more slowly or less agitating than, or emotionally difficult, probably use that, more emotionally difficult, less emotionally difficult to you and I, it will happen more quickly. And what happens for someone who has autism in that moment is parts of their brain actually shut off, like the mirror neurons in the brain that help us interact with people and socialize and mirror what other people are doing in social situations. Those are one of the parts of the brain that turn off. So you can't go to someone who has autism and just try to coach them on social things. You have to understand there's actually some neurowiring because of their neurodiversity that is causing their brain to function that way. So the way that kind of ties into sexual addiction is that a lot of the coping and like the addictive piece in that area may be related to this issue of processing emotion. And someone who is experiencing autism might say, like, I'm trying to find, or they might I guess they're trying to find a way to cope where they're getting shut down more quickly and they're going into defense mode and just kind of turning inward. And so that is a long explanation. here's my recommendation. You should probably find someone who has more experience in understanding the nature of autism, because the way that your brain works is going to really shape how your addiction forms. The other piece that I would say is if someone is shut down and unwilling to start looking into recovery, there's only so much influence that you can have over that person until they're ready to start making choices to get better. What do you guys think?
Well said, man.
Thanks, Sam.
You're welcome. If there's more on that we want to talk about, we can.
I trust your experience in that. I have very little experience with that.
Yep.
Okay. So if you have autism and you're experiencing addiction, that might be helpful to go find a little bit more information about processing deficits and how you can get help with that, because that's very tied into what you're experiencing. I think we have one. Is it just one? I think we just have one more question. And this is a good one. So we'll close with this. I have a girlfriend and I'm worried that I have to break up with her in order to truly fight this addiction for the right reasons, rather than just for her. I love her so much and I don't want to end things, but I'm at a big fork in the road and I don't know what to do. I need some time to think on that one. What do you guys think?
You don't have to break up with a girl to overcome pornography. The end.
So I think it's important to understand why, though, because I think I agree with you, and that's the first thing that came to my mind. But why? Because I've heard that thrown around there sometimes, like, oh, I don't, maybe it's better to recover on your own or whatever.
So look at that. Like, were you looking at the porn before she even came around? This has nothing to do with her. This has everything to do with unmanaged emotions and being able to get in a place where you can learn new healthy coping mechanisms that help you in your life. New ways of dealing with stress and anxiety that are not using unhealthy mechanisms like porn, masturbation, and sex.
Yeah, I mean, you listen to the stories on here. Like, a lot of the guys struggled with pornography prior to getting married, right? I did.
Like almost
yeah.
I think 99% of the guests that we've had, I think we've had
Sure.
like one or two that were
a couple that
like
picked
that.
it up after. Yep. But like, it doesn't change whether or not you can recover, whether you're single or not. If that was the magic bullet, everyone would be like, I figured out the magic bullet. If you don't get married first, or you don't have a girlfriend. Like, but no, like, we are relational beings. We're like, if anything, a girlfriend or like getting married or whatever, all that's going to do is essentially force your hand at like, nope, it's time to actually stop isolating. It's time to start not using unhealthy coping mechanisms. It's time for you to get honest. It's, like, it puts you in the fire of like, are you going to be living healthy principles or not? And like, looking at pornography does not disqualify you from being worthy to be in a relationship with somebody. That's making a mountain out of a molehill.
Love that.
Like, if you love this girl and she loves you, and you're talking about the fact that pornography is a struggle for you and that you currently use it as a coping mechanism to deal with stress, anger, boredom, because boredom feels too difficult, stress feels too difficult, and anger feels too difficult right now. And so it's like, oh, I need to actually learn how to deal with these emotions. And actually being in a relationship with you is actually going to up my level of stress, up my level of anger, up my level of, boredom. I don't know. Probably not, but maybe. So what? You still have the same issues you got to cope with anyway. But if you have somebody that you can do that with, that wants to walk with you in the journey, because guess what? She's going to have stuff she's going to need to deal with too. Like, it doesn't make you unworthy to be in relationship with people. And I'm just curious if how much of that question came from a shame place.
That was my response too. I'd be curious to know what you're doing in your relationship to create safety. Not just you, but the two of you together. Because I've had a similar experience where I felt like my addiction got worse when I was in a relationship. And I've also had the opposite experience now where being in a relationship with my current girlfriend has meant everything to me. She has been so helpful. She has been someone who I can open up to about things, in addition to my brothers. It's because I'm finally actually learning, not learned, but learning how to create safety for myself in a relationship. Like, hey, I'm feeling really overwhelmed and ashamed right now. There's stuff that I need to talk to you about. Do you have a place right now in your heart where we could have that conversation? Right?
Yep. One more question.
Yeah, totally. So the last question. This is maybe the real last question. Maybe we have a second one. I don't know. Can you give me some realistic timelines for recovery? I know everyone will be different, but I went into this thinking maybe a year or less, so it's hard to have patience sometimes when progress seems slow.
I've been in recovery since I would say I started recovery when I was 13. I would say I seriously started recovering about it's been 2.5 years now.
Yeah.
So I'm at least 2.5 years into recovery, and I think that I am rounding a corner, but not quite sure where I am in that process. It could be 4 years, it could be 10 years. I don't know.
So I would just say, to make it realistic, recovery is a lifestyle change.
Yep.
Do you know anybody that did a complete lifestyle change in a year or less?
Nope.
I don't.
Right. And again, whoever's asking this question, this person's been living a certain way with certain attitudes and a certain lifestyle, certain thought patterns for 18 years at least. So, like, to suddenly change 18 years of thought patterns, behavioral patterns, belief systems in a year or less, right? So my answer to this person is give yourself grace, learn to be kind to yourself. And again, if your compulsion is masturbation and pornography, don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Don't make it bigger than it is. Like, because that's part of the problem, is the shame will make it feel super, super critical and important. And so if you're in that pattern of it's like, yep, it's once a week, or like mine, once every 3 months, and all of a sudden you're just thinking like, oh, this is taking forever. Like, again, practice a lot of grace. If it's super uncontrollable and your life is like unmanageable because like you're missing work, you're getting fired from jobs, like, yeah, I get that. Let's get you some help. But if that's the extent to which if you think you can flip that around in a year, if that's the degree to which you're needing it, is it to survive right now? Like, no, let's get you some help. And that might take a minute to learn new coping mechanisms.
Yep, new patterns, new lifestyle.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yep.
That's why I've got 3 different sobriety dates. And like for me, when I first started, I was like, oh, I got this. I'll go into this. And me and my wife both thought, we'll be in this for a year and everything will be awesome and beautiful and perfect. And here we are. I mean, it took me a long time to find sobriety, but like I've got the 3 different sobriety days because there was times when I stopped looking at porn, and that was January 2008. And then last time I was with a woman outside of my marriage was in April of 2008, and then masturbation was December of 2009. So almost 2 years from that, from pornography to masturbation, was almost 2 years, 2 full years.
Yeah.
And so having some grace around yourself, I love that. Just being like, I'm
Chris,
learning all sorts of
yours
new
is one of the
things.
fastest timelines I've ever heard of, by the way.
Yeah.
So just FYI for context, in my lived experience and of like literally talking to, at this point now, probably over 1,000 men probably more personally. That's when it's still one of the fastest recovery stories, like timeline windows that I've seen people experience, from like sober, you know what I mean? But like that whole lifestyle, just because the sober part happened, recovery took a long time for Chris.
Yep.
To actually live a recovery lifestyle and do a bunch of other things to still implement that, which is acknowledging that like just the porn and the women and the masturbation wasn't the whole extent of the problem.
Totally.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. I also kind of like the piece there of sobriety dates. Are we talking about, I'm wondering if this person is clear on their definition of sobriety and recovery, because a lot of times I could see myself, even sometimes now, but especially early in recovery, being like, how long is it going to take me before I can stop looking at porn? And if you actually look at the recovery journey of Chris versus the sobriety journey of Chris, the recovery journey has lasted well beyond the sobriety journey.
Because it's my lifestyle and the way I live.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what comes to mind for me. My kind of lived experience in that realm is that, like early on, I did not realize that a lot of these things were like built in as like survival mechanisms for me. And I had to start dealing with some trauma and some really, really poor emotional coping before I could get to a place where there was enough space between the stimulus and the reaction that I had some freedom to choose in between there. Not that you ever completely lose your freedom, but it's taken me a couple of years now to get to the point. I remember I said, like, for the first time, like 4 months ago, like, I feel like I have a choice. It was crazy. I genuinely felt like, oh my gosh, I have a choice now. And that took a couple years. And I'm not there yet. I relapsed a week and a half ago. So, but for me to say like a year ago that, like, I felt like I pretty easily went 10 days without porn, or I mean, I made it like a month not too long ago, like that would have been crazy. And it's because of the recovery that's underneath that. So those two processes are working in tandem, and they're all part of one bigger process that happens. I mean, it sounds like it's always generally years to change a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep. Love it, man.
Okay. Guys, thank you so much for joining us for this Q&A. Haven't done that in a while. Never since I've been hosting, so that was fun for me. If you have more questions and you're curious about different aspects of recovery that you're not getting answers to, go ahead, shoot us an email, Sam, Chris, James at unashamedunafraid.com. Thank you for listening. If this was helpful, share it with someone you know who could use it. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And thanks again for watching. Continue to live unashamed.
Yeah.